All right, guys, what's up? So, welcome back, first of all. Now, if something's dirty, most likely you clean it. Most people, they'll take something that's fully dusty, a table or a lamp or something, and they'll clean it down. Now, same can be said for ductwork. We just can't see what's inside of it. But when we do, and if it's dirty, what are we going to do with that? Are we going to clean it? Are we going to leave it? There's a lot of people in the building science community, indoor air quality community that say cleaning ductwork is not really a necessity. It's not needed. It can actually create more problems than not. And yeah, they're right. If it's not done the right way, you're going to hear me talk to Richard Turner here, who is a professional duct cleaner and some of the things that he does. And I'll tell him how a board I was working on after an install of an air handler was covered in dust. Now, something went wrong there. So if it's not done correctly, yes, it can cause a disturbance of particulate, and that's going to end up in the home or the building. We're going to talk to Richard about trying to do things the correct way when we do duct work cleaning. But in my opinion, if we can do it correctly, it should be cleaned if it is dirty. So let's get to Richard. This is part one with Richard Turner. This is the HVAC Know-It-All podcast. I'm your host, Gary McCreadie. This podcast is sponsored by Cool Air Products, Master, Cintas, and SupplyHouse.com. Go to the show notes and click on the links to check these guys out. All right, Richard, the duct cleaning thing has been debated lots and lots and lots on social media, LinkedIn, face-to-face. Some people say that it creates more of a mess than anything. I know that I've seen some duct cleaners do things wrong. I told you the story offline where I installed an air handler. The ducts were clean because it was a new construction job in a house under renovation. When I went back, the whole circuit board in the air handler was covered in dust. Now, I don't know how that happened. Obviously, they didn't do a correct job because they were blowing it around inside the duct rather than removing it. I'm sure it's not like that all the time. So first, give me your take on why do you think that the duct cleaner caused more of an issue for me after leaving? Like prior to coming, there was no dust all over the circuit board. After you left, it was all over the place. So tell me what you think happened there. Then we'll get into a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they weren't doing it properly. You got to push and pull the dust around. So essentially, it sounds like they didn't have the system under negative pressure or suction or enough suction. And so when they agitated the dust, they may have just pushed it right down into the plenum or down into the furnace unit. It just depends on. It sounds like they were probably cleaning the return side incorrectly. For us anyway, we put a filter block in, so you just kind of isolate the furnace, and you want to keep it separate from the whole duct cleaning process. We'll clean the cabinet and things like that, but yeah, it sounds like they didn't have enough suction and they were just agitating the dust inside.
Okay, so I've seen this comment several times. Is there any data to show what duct cleaning will do? But here's the thing. If something's dirty, it should be cleaned. Like if there's dust on a table and you see it, most people clean it. I mean, that dust probably isn't going to go anywhere unless you walk up to the table and start pounding your fist on it, and maybe you'll agitate some of that dust. Otherwise, it's going to sit right where it is. But people clean it. People clean that dust because it's just part of what people do. Most people, anyway, they'll clean their house or whatever. And I just don't understand why, if something's dirty, let's clean it. But there's a proper way to do it. So you're on the show here to talk about duct cleaning because that's what you do. Most of it's commercial, but there's a way to do this and a way to do it correctly. So let's talk about how the process of duct cleaning, like when you arrive on site, what are we doing? What are we setting up? How are we getting into the ducts? What equipment are we using? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, first, before we even get to the job,
Sure.
we quote it out. So if we're doing a commercial job, we'll do an inspection with the facility manager, maintenance manager, whoever, depends on the type of facility. And so we already have a good understanding of what we're going to do before we get in there. And so, but essentially, like once that's all been figured out, we basically arrive on site and start at the unit itself, at the HVAC unit, whether it's a rooftop unit or just a large residential style furnace in the bottom. We turn that off. And then we isolate the system. So if it's a residential furnace, and I think that's probably easier for most people to understand, we'll put a coil block over top of the air conditioning coil. So that protects any debris from falling down. We like to hook our vacuum right up to the plenum, or as close to the plenum as possible, because we want to be able to get down there and clean the condensate pan and things like that. In really dirty systems, you'll see like dust and not just dust, but like debris, like toys and stuff like that down there, especially if it hasn't been well maintained or cleaned. So we'll isolate the whole furnace. Just we don't want any of the debris getting pushed in there. We'll put a filter block in just to prevent, and then you got to clean each side independently. So we'll clean the return air side, and at the start usually, and then we'll do the supplies after. On a lot of commercial units, they'll have open air returns, right? So those are a lot easier. We still want to clean that plenum, and a lot of the time they're insulated, so you got to be careful how you do it because the high pressure whips that we use will just shred that stuff. So that's another, kind of concern. And that's why you really want to make sure you're hiring someone that knows how to do it properly. But anyway, yeah, we cut an 8-inch hole into the ductwork, put the system under negative pressure, and then we, like, just in a nutshell, we use contact cleaning systems. So they're whip rods, and that's really whip rods and brushes and air ones. But really the main tool is a whip, which basically is these plastic 12-inch or 24-inch tassels. They're connected on a plastic whip rod that's hooked up to a large compressor. And the main thing is continuous airflow and high pressure. So you can't be using like a homeowner's like DeWalt little tank, And then we just literally beat the hell out of the inside of the ductwork. You loosen the dust off the inside walls, and then the vacuum just pushes it into the vacuum.
Okay, so what about, because you're talking about these high pressure whips. I've seen videos. I think this company's out in New Jersey. I can't remember their name, but I've seen videos of these whips going into flex duct and not breaking it. So is there like more softer type materials that we can put in flex? Like how do you go about the flex duct stuff?
Yeah, great question. There's high pressure whips and low pressure whips just on the material of the plastic tassel. So the lower pressure ones are more of like a flexible rubbery one, like rubbery material, and then the high pressure ones are more of like a plastic. They're still flexible, but you can hear the way the sound that they make on the inside of the ductwork. Obviously, the rubber ones are softer and more flexible. They don't agitate it as much. The second thing is like really dialing back the pressure on your compressor for the air pressure itself. You still need volume to move the dust through the system, but if you have it cranked up at 200 psi, you're just going to shred that stuff. So again, you just need to hire someone who knows what they're doing, so that when they put their whips in there, because you have to agitate it. You can't just blow compressed air through. It won't loosen it off the walls. It might on the first 6 inches, 12 inches, but as that pressure dissipates, it's got to be agitated. And there's some other tools that we use as well. Like you could use, like on smaller ductwork, like say on a dryer vent, we'll use like a skipper ball, which is like a smooth bullet like tool. And when you pull it out, it kind of does this down the duct and loosens everything off. So it just depends on the scenario that we're in, and we got various tools to clean it. But I'll be honest, like there's never been a system that I haven't been able to clean.
Okay, cool. So what I've noticed when taking apart some duct, and I go back to, like, I was at my brother and sister-in-law's place, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, put in a humidifier for them, and I cut a section of the duct out. This was, it was the return duct that I cut out. And inside the return duct, there was literally a 1/4 inch of dust coating the entire thing. The house was 40 years old, so original duct, probably the second furnace in the house. But it was the original duct. And I'm like, wow, like this is crazy. So the filter is at the furnace. There's no filter on the return grills. Now I've seen there's a lot of places where they filter differently. Like in where I am, and you're local to me. I didn't even know that until we talked on the phone a little while ago. But most of the homes and buildings that I work on is the filter is localized right at the machine. So the return ducts are really not getting filtered. So I wanted to ask you, do you see any locations where they're actually filtering the air before it hits the return duct? Do you see that application at all around?
More recently, like you can go to Home Depot and buy a return grill cover that allows you to put in, they're usually like 12 inches tall by, say, depends on the size of the return, maybe 16, 12 or 16, 36 inches. And you can actually put 1-inch filters in there, like a MERV 8 filter, which I thought was kind of interesting. So that's like, those are newer. Most people don't have those, but that's the only other thing I've seen.
Okay.
You can get the whole premise of like air quality, and the way that I kind of talk about it with our clients is pretty common sense too, but it's like you clean the system, you clean your HVAC system, including all the ductwork, and then you can maintain that cleanliness through filtration and purification. So if you have air purifiers in the house, that's going to keep the dust down and prevent it from getting pulled in to the returns. If you have, pets like cats and dogs that shed with danders and stuff, it's going to accumulate in your return ductwork a lot faster. And so people are always like, oh, how often do we need to clean it? And the answer is, I don't know. Every house is a little bit different. And I think if homeowners or even business owners, like just take off some of the grills and you'll see the dust accumulation in there. And really, again, common sense, but it's not like when your furnace is running, it's just like picking this stuff up and just like sending gobs of dust through your house, but it's just agitating it a little bit. It just kind of creates like these dusty environments. And you'll see like homeowners or businesses, you'll clean a surface or you'll have cleaners come in, and 2 days later, there's like a fine layer of dust on it. And if you think about it, if you're in that space for 8 hours a day or 12 hours or 24 hours, if it's your house, you're breathing that stuff in every day. And so the people that we talk to, a lot of our clients will say that, they think that they have allergies. And in a lot of cases, it's just a lot of like they're breathing in dust all day long.
Yeah. You bring up a good point about air purifiers, because I've got like a little portable one that I plug in and it's got a HEPA on it. I think those things are great, actually. There's some like really expensive high-end ones out there. Like some of them are like $2,000 and they're not even that big of a unit, but I guess I don't know why they cost that much, but I've got a couple of them actually. I have a small one on my main floor that I keep plugged in. It's just a fan, but it's got a HEPA filter in it. And because we got a dog that sheds like a maniac, so I got it essentially for that. So the room that she likes to sit in, she's got like her own couch if we had to put a cover over it, because she's got white hair and the couch is like a dark gray. So we're like, this is your couch if you want to lay on the couch. And in that room, there's an air purifier, and the amount of dog hair that gets jammed in that thing is crazy. So I'm glad that you said that. Yeah, if you've got clean ducts, let's maintain them. And the reason I asked you about the return filter is I wanted to get your take on if the return filters that you've seen versus the filters at the cabinet, are the ducts substantially cleaner when there's a filter at the return? And I'm only asking you this because filters, in order for them to work properly, there can't be like bypass around the filter, right? Because the air is going to try to, once that filter gets loaded or partially loaded, and there's restriction there, if there's bypass around the filter, the air is going to leak. I'm going to go through that bypass. That's easier for me to get through. So what's your experience on the return side of a duct when there's a filter in place before it gets to the air handler or furnace or whatever it is?
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Like path of least resistance, right? So if there's a little hole in there, it's going to take it every time. I think there's a misunderstanding, and you'll this in your business, but in most cases, depending on the type of filter that you have, it's not really there designed for air quality, especially your standard, Merve, 1-inch filters, pleated filters that 90% of homeowners have. They're actually designed for like to protect your furnace, to prevent like debris and hair and stuff like that from getting into the blower wheel. Yeah, it does catch the bigger particles, but really the fine dust just passes right through those things anyway. And so to answer your question, the stuff that's in the return, like if you were to put one of those in the return vents, because you can't put a HEPA filter in your return vent because it'll choke the system out. It's too restrictive. And even still, it'll accumulate dust so quickly, you'll be changing them all the time. So you've got to find that balance of filtration and airflow, right? There's not really much you can do to like just dust is created every day from people shedding their skin and their hair and dander and opening your windows. And so it's just like cleaning your house. There's no way to keep your house spotless all the time, right?
Yeah.
You can have one of those vacuums, like those robot vacuums that vacuums it up, but there's always going to be some sort of an accumulation. And naturally, since it's coming into the house, whenever your system is running, it's going to get pulled into the system as well, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the cheap Merv 8s being there to protect the appliance, because essentially that's what it's there to do. It's not there to be an indoor air quality device. If you want something that's going to actually filter out the particulate matter in the air that affects human health, you need to go to a larger filter, like a 5 or 4 inch filter, and you need to increase the MERV rating on that. Now, not all systems are designed for a higher MERV rating. That's a problem, because a lot of people they'll see advertised MERV 13 through COVID. A lot of people went, oh, I'm getting a MERV 13 filter. They shove it into their system that's not designed, that doesn't have the airflow capacity to move air through a MERV 13. And they don't know it, but they're actually causing their system to deep dive into a slow death, because you're choking the air, especially on the heating side of things. It's not good for a heat exchanger, because you're going to raise that heat exchanger temperature to its upper limit. And then when it cools down, now you're taking the range of contraction and expansion to a larger range, rather than just having it humming along at a decent level. So before you shove in something that's bigger in MERV, you really need to look at the system. Now, how you can combat that is putting in the 5-inch filter, because it's got more surface area, a deeper pleat. So you might be able to put in a MERV 13 in a 5-inch, and it'll still be the same airflow as a 1-inch at a MERV 8. It's difficult to say, but you get more airflow, less static pressure across those deeper pleated filters. That's a fact. People like to argue that still, but it is a fact. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now, I wanted to ask you, because a lot of duct cleaners talk about a chemical to decontaminate or get rid of odors, and people say it's a masking agent. Some people say it's actually deodorizing and neutralizing scents and stuff like that. Do you do that? Can you talk about that for a minute?
There's only really a handful of products that you can use for that, and we use it a lot in the restoration world. So picture if you've got mold in a house, or there was fire or smoke damage, and I've got a couple of my guys are out doing various jobs today. One of them's doing a mold restoration, and the other one's doing a fire loss, but it was
Okay.
actually the neighbor's house that caught on fire. It's the same process. So we basically clean the HVAC system and the ductwork, right? Remove all the dust and particulate, because that actually holds odors and bacteria and stuff like that, especially if moisture has gotten into the system.
Yeah.
If you have a water loss, right? And so we clean all that, and then we treat it with a product called Benefect, which is an all-natural antimicrobial. It kills 99% of bacteria and organic material in general. So this is great for like cat urine. It basically breaks down those smells and odors. Mouse feces and stuff like that is really harmful to breathe that stuff in as it breaks down in the system. And so we'll fog that in through the system once it's cleaned, and then you fog it in, and it coats all four walls of the ductwork. And we'll go, we'll start at the bottom, push it all the way through the main trunk lines, and then we go up to each vent and push it down. And so you're pushing it up and down to make sure you're getting a thorough coating. A lot of people will kind of include it for free, and I always laugh. It's just like, are you even doing it properly? Because if you're properly applying this stuff, it takes time, right? Especially if you're in a big 3,000, 4,000 square foot house, you got to go to each vent and push it down. So yes, it helps with organic material. So if there's mold or smells and odors, it can help with that. Now, when we deal with fire restorations and things like that, smoky odor can linger and really stick to the ductwork, just like it would stick to a 2x4. So what we do is we, again, clean the ductwork, and then we use a sealant. It's an encapsulant. And then we can also put a deodorizer in there as well, which actually changes the chemical composition of the scent molecule itself. And so to go back, the disinfectant, this stuff is there's a regulatory body that we follow, which is called NADCA, the National Air Duct Cleaning Association.
Okay.
And then so NADCA works with the IICRC, which is basically they regulate the restoration world.
Okay.
So we can fog in this disinfectant while people are home. You don't need to wear masks or anything. Our guys don't wear masks. It's like I said, it's an all natural product. The challenge with it is it just takes it takes about 10 minutes to kill everything. And that's why they don't use it in hospitals. Right. And it doesn't kill like AIDS and staph and some of these other viruses. But for mold and water and all that kind of stuff, it's perfect for that. When we get into the fire restoration, we actually are using a chemical. It's an encapsulant. So you can't breathe this stuff in. Same with the deodorizer. So you actually have to seal off all of the vents when you fog it in so that it doesn't escape and basically other workers that could be in there, the homeowner, if the homeowner's in while you're cleaning it, is affected by that.